Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemophilepod.com. After a deadly plane crash strands four young siblings deep in the Colombian rainforest, a dramatic rescue mission unfolds, uniting indigenous trackers and the military in a race against time. For the first time ever, Lost in the Jungle offers an exclusive account of this incredible true story directly from the children themselves and the rescuers who scoured the Amazon rainforest for a grueling 40 days and 40 nights to find them. We're joined today by one of our very favorite directors and guests, Elizabeth Chai Vasarhelyi, as well as new to the program, Juan Camilo Cruz. And Jimmy Chin is not with us. He's also part of this triumvirate of film directors who made this remarkable film. Juan Camilo Cruz and Chai Vasarhelyi, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you, Mike.
Chai, considering your previous work on the film The Rescue, did that have any bearing? Did that pull you into this, wanting to tell this story in the way that you and Jimmy and Juan did? Or did the challenges of telling this story stand on their own in terms of you being attracted to pursuing this particular project?
Well, I mean, the story, once it became clear that the four children could be alive, and then when they're found 40 days in, like it's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary story of survival. However, there is DNA from the rescue where I was kind of haunted by the rescue and like kind of what transpired with some of the children from the Thai soccer team. And I felt like I was in a unique position to tell the story the right way and that it could really kind of change Leslie's life and those kids' lives. Just because, it's rare that an Indigenous girl gets to tell her own story in her own words. It's rare that like victims of domestic abuse get to own their own story. And clearly there was something special here. I don't know any 13-year-old who could survive that and keep her three younger siblings alive, including an infant. So, it was complicated. There were a lot of factors at play. It's a very complicated political and socioeconomic constellation, different belief systems. And I was very lucky that my agent also worked with Juan Camilo, and Juan Camilo was like elbow deep in this story. So it was kind of like a real coming together of minds. And it's such a complicated story to tell that like, I don't know. I think it was a perfect match.
As a testament to your work, you and Juan and Jimmy, it feels uncomplicated in the telling. You can tell the different layers that are involved here, the military, the indigenous peoples, the story itself, the family dynamics, all of these things are in play, Juan, but it's laid out beautifully. Juan, tell me a little bit about how you came to this project.
Well, I'm Colombian, so I was here as the story was unfolding, and in Colombia it was huge news, once the people knew that the kids were lost in the jungle and that it triggered such a big operation, everybody was following this like if we were following the World Cup, it was like kind of like, what's happening with this? And it became big and big and big and big. And, as a filmmaker, I understood once the kids were found that was just a miracle that it could have happened, and that it was just a remarkable story that needed to be told, and at the same time an opportunity to talk a little bit about a lot of things that are happening in my country at the same moment, so that's what pulled me in the story. And I got access very fast to the indigenous group that were part of the rescue operation, and through them, everything started to come together, as Chai was saying, it was a good agency, and then together we started, putting all the dots together and getting all the access and trying to collect all the information that we need to make the story. But yeah, it was just a fascinating story and a good opportunity to talk about my country. And as a person that lived so many years outside of the country, that have made films a lot in very different places and not in Colombia, I thought it was a great opportunity to make a film in my country as well.
Well, Juan, I'm curious. So the plane crash happened. How long did it take for the plane crash and the dawning realization that there were survivors? Was how long of a gap in terms of the understanding of what had happened?
The plane crashed, and then the operation started like almost 6 days in, And then around 15 days after, the plane crash is when they actually realized that they were survivors.
Wow.
It took them a little bit, to find the plane, because you have to understand that the Amazon is huge. The place where they were, where the plane crash is absolutely nothing close. This is just basically a river, which is a highway for narco traffic in the country. The closest, just so that you can understand the geography, the closest town to the area where the plane crashed is 9 hours by boat just to reach that place. And just between that town and the plane crash, there is just one or two houses, maybe. So it's just like in the middle of nowhere. So in order to find the plane, it took them a lot of time. They first found the little baby bottle, and then they found the plane.
Right.
So it was a very challenging situation. And then once they took the plane down and realized, okay, there were supposed to be seven, there's three people dead here. Where are the other rest? And the rest were the kids. That's what, when it became a huge story. So yeah, it was a challenging operation all the way.
Well, one last thing, Juan. I can't imagine that during that period of time that you just described, they didn't assume that the children would have been dead by then. Well, they found the bottle. I guess that was the first thing that gave them some hope that they had traveled away from the crash site, right?
I mean, at the beginning, I think there weren't really big hopes, to be honest. I don't think
Yeah.
that nobody really had hopes. They wanted just to find the plane, and because it's part of what they needed to do. But once they found the baby bottle. I mean, it was kind of in the movie. The Popeye mentioned this. It was like, what is this thing doing here in the middle of
Yep.
nowhere? It's such a casualty. I don't know how I can say it. A coincidence basically. And then, eventually when they found the plane, of course, and the kids weren't there. It was just like incredible. So yeah.
Chai, I know you probably have sort of a radar for these kinds of stories around the world, but were you aware of it around the time of the crash, or when did that sort of become, when did it show up on your radar?
It was quite a big story in Europe, unlike more
Okay.
than in the States. And it was honestly like, yes, it's because of my radar. And immediately friends began reaching out to me about this, being like, you're going to find this interesting. I was actually in Turkey and when the children were found, and it just, I don't know. Yeah, it had us kind of written all over it, right? Like it's exactly the sort of story I'm interested in because, it really is this story of individual courage. And despite all these like very complex obstacles of belief systems, of politics, of indigenous versus military, of like generational trauma, it was like individual courage that allowed these people, like the rescuers, to come together with the military, as well as Leslie to find the strength to save her siblings. And like, so I felt like it was just like a good story for our times when everything feels so overwhelming, be it politically or with climate change. Like, here's a good example of how one person can change something.
And I do want to talk about this at some point during our conversation. You and your past work with Jimmy and with others, the way that you traverse the world and bring the humanity out in all of these different stories that you've been a part of, going back to Maru, which was the first time I spoke with you. And since then, you have literally traveled. I don't know what continent you have not been on yet. Have you been to Antarctica at
I've
some?
made a film about Antarctica, but I haven't.
I'm I'm sorry, I
Jimmy
missed.
went. Jimmy went. I didn't go.
Oh,
Um,
okay, okay.
because in that, yeah, since Meru, we've had two small kids. So our dog is called Meru too, and he just was like talking about me. Um, but yeah, and I think it's like it's kind of who I am. It's like, I grew up with the child of immigrant parents. My dad's Hungarian, but grew up in Brazil, and my mom's Chinese, and she emigrated to the States when she was 17. So I didn't have much immediate family in New York when I was growing up. So I traveled a lot, and like I grew up speaking a bunch of different languages, and
Amazing.
it's just always been kind of a thing where I feel like I'm an outsider everywhere, but also that allows me to be like the most intimate type of translator,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
it really extends to the work and what drives me behind the work because I feel like there's a common humanity
Yeah.
that can stretch across differences. And the older I get, the more complicated it seems. At the same time, like the more simple it seems. You're like, it just takes standing up for something.
And your curiosity, you and your team and Jimmy, your curiosity about the world as well. And Juan, it's hard to overstate how determined Leslie must have been, and how many quiet moments she must have wondered, not only would she survive, but why, as it's in the film, why she shouldn't just wander up and hope for the best. I mean, it's
Such an
unbelievable.
honest moment. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's unbelievable that she, at her age, wouldn't have wondered, I can't do this, and I don't want to die doing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know all the thoughts that went through her head, Juan, but she gets into it a little bit in the film. We don't get a lot of that sort of backstory, except at one point she does admit to that she wanted to just walk away. But getting to know her, as you must have over the course of making this film, what jumps out at you as to why and how she managed to persevere as long as she did?
She's my superhero, like, and the reality is that she grew up in the jungle, like,
Mm-hmm.
and once you grow up in that environment, there are things that you understand in a different way than us. You're used to play in the jungle, to be at night in the jungle, to make little houses with plants, to understand which plants are around there, what can you do with them, so it's not like we have to understand that it's not a person that grew up like us. It's a person that was extremely familiar to the environment, the logistical aspect of it, but more of the deep understanding of the space and what the challenges of it was. So I think that for her, it was in terms of many ways something natural and something that she was close to. But I think she also had like a strength that has been built throughout years of everything that she had to endure in many different ways, and
Yes,
that
yes.
that strength that she was able to get, to become the mother of these children even before the tragedy, everything that happened. I think that's what gave her, all the elements to be able to survive. And of course, you have to imagine as a human, being in such harsh situations. You of course have to question yourself about everything. You just saw your mother die. You just survived the plane crash. You survived an domestic abuse situation. Like, imagine then having to carry three kids in your back. What could it felt in the middle of nowhere? So I think it's just very honest to question yourself and to have doubts. And I think that's the reason why this is on the film, just to also understand the strength that she has to be able to endure this situation in the way that she did, and to be able to be there for 40 days, which I'm pretty sure a person, neither of us could have survived. So it's just incredible.
You said 40 days, which again, one other thing about the story that's unbelievable. But there's this other whole element, and Chai, you alluded to it earlier. It's the social politics, it's the interaction of the indigenous people with the Colombian military and their relationship to the narco traffickers. And there's all of that going on. It just provides another whole level of how did this happen? How did they cooperate with each other long enough? Because it's completely understandable the distrust on both sides. Completely understandable. Talk a little bit about that dynamic.
Well, I mean, it's extraordinary, and it's really truly one of those things that like you have to see it to believe it.
Mhm.
When you look at these Colombian special forces who are, elite, military forces, and they have spent careers fighting guerrillas in the jungle, right? And yet, for the most part, they're Roman Catholic, and they truly come to respect that there are things they do not know, and there are things they may not understand. And, you know, for them to be able to work together and that camaraderie that was built is just, and to find their common humanity, like it's extraordinary. And I think it's very, very hopeful because, like, if we all could bring a little bit of that to our lives, like, we'd be in a much better place. But it's just like crazy when you watch these interviews because, like, they really believe, like, and you're like, we're talking about a goblin. They used a Black Hawk to carry an alcoholic offering for the goblin that's in the jungle. Like,
Exactly.
and, I think you see it in the rescue too, where like we bring deep respect to these indigenous belief systems. Because, like, who's to say like that it wasn't that didn't happen? Like, in a way, like the duende is traditionally something like a force that is mischievous, but also kind of a protector of some sort. And like there seems to be like Leslie had a guardian angel with her in some way. And she was put in a like a terrible position, like knowing that her stepfather is searching for her. And so I think, I don't know, I was really moved by it, and I hope that people audiences receive it this way, like, because there are a lot of different things can be true at once, but like I think there's nothing like, strangers coming together to save children that can really like remind us of what we share.
Absolutely. And let's not lose sight of the fact that it was the indigenous people who found them. And it was a shaman who led the way in finding them through means that are completely antithetical to a Western mindset, completely at odds with what we tend to, not everyone, I don't want to be absolute about this, but the tendency is to not believe in almost everything that happens in this film. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I really want to lean into that because I think in addition to being just an incredible story, a phenomenal set of events, set of things that had to happen for this to go the way it did, the indigenous people were right about almost everything that we see in the film. And I'm just going to say that I'm editorializing here, but I do think that indigenous culture and indigenous people are going to save us if we're to be saved in this world. And I think you both traveled the world enough to know that the indigenous people have been the ones who have been put in places, in the darkest places on this planet, and have survived and are the ones who I'm a big believer in whatever they know about the world we live in, we need to learn it as well. It's an amazing film. It's an amazing story. And once again, Shai Vasarhelyi, thank you for your work with Jimmy Chin and Juan Camilo Cruz. Thank you for bring to bear your experience as well as your background and your knowledge. And it just makes this film just elevate and be something really special. So my hat's off to all of you for your work here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Take care, Mike.
The film is called Lost in the Jungle. I believe it's it's a release through
Disney. It's on Disney Plus September 13th.
September 13th. Seek it out. Subscribe to Disney if you have to. Lost in the Jungle. We've been speaking with the co-directors, two of them, Elizabeth Shai Vasarhelyi and Juan Camilo Cruz, and hats off to Jimmy Chin as well. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you very much.
Take care.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.